Every fan knows Senna.
And Senna wins at Monaco for the 5th time.
Quite brilliant couple of corners by Ayrton Senna.
Schumacher.
Michael Schumacher gets his 7th Formula One World Championship.
Hamilton.
He crosses the line now to become the 4-time world champion. Lewis Hamilton does it.
But F1 isn't all shiny trophies and heroic moments. Behind the legendary and epic races, there are stories that basically vanished. Not because they were boring, but because they were way too dark, too embarrassing.
Drivers assembled in South Africa for the start of the 1982 racing season have refused to take their cars onto the Kyalami circuit to practice or race.
Or just too chaotic for the sport to keep bringing up. So yeah, get comfy. We're diving into some F1 stories the world pretty much forgot, but really shouldn't have. Let's start with the 2000 Italian Grand Prix, a race most people remember because Michael Schumacher, with 41 wins, finally matched Ayrton Senna. But behind that iconic moment, something really dark had happened right at the start. At the second chicane, Frenzen's Jordan snapped sideways, and suddenly cars are flying everywhere.
And wow, that's the 2 Jordans and a
Many cars piling in at the back. Terrible accident there.
That's when a loose wheel, bouncing like a missile, takes the worst possible path. It hits a fire marshal, Paolo Gislimberti, 33 years old. The cameras don't show anything. The commentators barely understand what's going on.
Somebody down there.
I'm just wondering whether...
And after the red flag, the race goes on. Meanwhile, right next to the track, they're trying to revive Paolo, but nothing works. Paolo is treated at the circuit's medical center before being airlifted to Niguarda Hospital in Milan. But sadly, his chest and head injuries were just far too severe to save him. Paolo's funeral was held in Lavis at the San Uldarico church on the 14th of September. His coffin was wrapped with the flag of Ferrari, as Gislimberti had a passion for the team. Paolo's death pushed the FIA to basically warn Monza, fix your runoff areas and barriers or you're out of the championship. What happened was unacceptable, and it was a wake-up call for every other circuit on the calendar. But despite that, tragedy hit Formula One again, just 6 months later at the 2001 Australian GP. It was lap 5 when that massive crash between Villeneuve and Ralf Schumacher happened.
Oh, big shunt. Oh, that's the VAR. I wonder, it's Villeneuve.
Villeneuve's car went flying, slammed into the fence at insane speed, and basically shredded along the wall. One of his wheels broke off, the tether failed, and shot straight through a small gap in the fence. It hit a 51-year-old marshal, Graham Beveridge, at about 109 miles per hour. An ambulance rushed in. Officials kept people back, and they did everything they could. But by the time Graham made it to hospital, it was too late. The FIA looked into his death and basically called it a freak accident. But the coroner's report was harsher and said the race organizers were responsible and that the whole thing could have been avoided. And if we're talking about disasters that could have been avoided, then the 1975 Spanish Grand Prix at Montjuic is right at the top of the list. First of all, Montjuic was a track basically wrapped around a hill, trees right up against the road, ridiculous elevation changes, tight corners mixed with a full throttle section that gave engineers migraines. In short, the place was pure madness. If you're liking this video, a bit different from what I usually do, go ahead and smash the like button and subscribe. It would mean a lot, thanks. And if that wasn't crazy enough, guess what happened in 1975? The track, especially the guardrails, wasn't even finished by the time Friday practice was supposed to start. The drivers were so annoyed that some of them straight up refused to run the first session. They went out on foot with the Drivers Association, walking the whole circuit, and found guardrails barely attached. Some were literally loose, missing bolts and rivets. They basically said, fix this or we're not racing. It was complete chaos, much like the internet, where a ridiculous amount of your personal information is already online. Not just social media stuff, I mean your address, phone number, relatives, work history, sometimes even things you definitely never chose to make public. That's why I want to mention Incogni, because it's not random. There are entire companies called data brokers whose whole business is collecting that info and selling it. Anyone can buy access to it, marketers, scammers, strangers, you name it. Incogni basically does the annoying work you don't want to do. It automatically finds where your personal data is being posted and gets it removed from hundreds of data broker sites. And it doesn't just do it once, it keeps checking because that stuff tends to pop back up. With Incogni, you sign up, give one authorization, and they handle it. What I also like is their custom removals feature. If you ever Google yourself and you find a sketchy website listing your info, you just send Incogni the link and a real person takes care of it for you. No chasing websites, no back and forth emails. Their whole idea is pretty simple. They can't harm you if they can't find you. And this isn't some random service either. Incogni is actually the only data removal service independently verified by Deloitte, which is a big deal in a space that has a lot of empty promises. If you want to lower your risk of scams, identity theft, or just not have your life searchable by strangers, Incogni is a solid option. You can try it risk-free for 30 days, cancel anytime. Use code DailyFuelUp at the link below and get 60% off an annual plan. Alright. Back to the video. So from Friday night into Saturday morning, a bunch of track workers, plus a few team mechanics who jumped in to help, worked non-stop to patch everything up. And by Saturday, it looked like the circuit was finally ready for qualifying. Even after all that, everyone was still arguing. The track safety was basically stuck in the Stone Age for F1, but the organizers weren't having it. They straight up threatened legal action against any driver who didn't race. Reigning world champ Emerson Fittipaldi, he was done. He crawled around for the required 3 laps in qualifying, parked the car and said, nope. Didn't even bother showing up on Sunday. And honestly, he knew exactly what was coming. Because as soon as the race started, everything went to hell. Crashes everywhere, cars falling apart, drivers retiring in the first laps. But nope, race direction just kept the show running like it was totally fine. Then lap 26 hits. Rolf Stommelin's rear wing basically fell off at full speed. His car shot into the guardrail, bounced back onto the track like a pinball, smashed the barrier on the other side, and launched over it, straight into the crowd. Total disaster. The car mowed through over a dozen people, tore everything apart, and ended up in pieces. Stommelin himself got pretty messed up. Broken leg, busted wrist, a couple of cracked ribs. But the real tragedy was that 4 spectators died on the spot. Yeah, a total fucking disaster. And somehow, despite all that, the race kept going for 4 more laps. Yep, 4. And only then did they finally pull the plug and hand out half points. Total disaster. And that was pretty much the end of F1 at Montjuic. And here's another dark story that almost no one knows, and that F1 definitely doesn't want you to know about. 1982, the year F1 almost broke. Yep, you heard that right. Behind the scenes, the real battle was happening. Not on track, although that was crazy too, but between FISA and FOCA. On one side, FOCA, the big constructors alliance led by Bernie Ecclestone, wanted more power over the sport, the money, and the TV deals. On the other side, FISA, the governing body, wanted to keep tight control over the cars and the rules, but both sides were stubborn as hell, neither willing to give an inch, and the drivers and fans were right in the middle of the chaos. Things came to a head at the South African GP in Kyalami. FISA had banned certain cars and slapped on rules that FOCA teams absolutely hated. Drivers were furious, and some just refused to race. There was talk of a full-on strike all weekend. Nobody knew if the race would even happen.
Drivers assembled in South Africa for the start of the 1982 racing season have refused to take their cars onto the Kyalami circuit to practice or race.
Later in the year, some races got boycotted completely, and others ran with half the grid. Points were a total mess. F1 looked like it was about to fall apart. And the race in itself, 1982 was insane. 11 different winners in 16 races, a record at the time. And sadly, it was deadly too. Gilles Villeneuve and Riccardo Paletti both lost their lives.
I was in Monaco. I received a call from Jody Scheckter. He explained to me that Gilles just had a big accident. It was very serious, and I had to fly to Belgium immediately. I couldn't comprehend what he was telling me. I kept thinking, well, he's going to be okay, so it's okay.
politics, money fights, and danger all smashed together. Fans were confused, teams were frustrated, and F1's seriously looked like it could implode. By the end of the year, both sides realized they couldn't keep going like this. F1 was on the edge of collapse. FISA gave Fokker more say over the commercial side. Basically, Bernie Ecclestone got control of TV deals and money. Fokker, in return, agreed to follow FISA's rules on safety and car regs. This became the first Concord Agreement, balancing power between the teams and the governing body. While everyone was talking about the tragedies of Villeneuve and Paletti that season, one of the less-known stories was Didier Pironi. A guy who almost seemed like death was chasing him. After Villeneuve passed away, Pironi stepped up as Ferrari's lead driver, gunning for the championship that year. But the guy was under insane pressure. He kept racing knowing that Villeneuve's crash had happened because he was going flat out trying to beat him, all while his marriage was falling apart. Then, at the Canadian GP, he saw death again up close when Paletti smashed into his car after it stalled on the grid.
Pironi's in trouble. Pironi hasn't moved. One of the Azellas has hit very hard the back of Pironi's car. And the car's on fire. The car has burst into flames. Of course, it's absolutely full of fuel.
The impact had killed him. He died.
Est-ce qu'un instant vous avez pensé à raccrocher après ces deux drames?
Non. Non, parce que la course automobile est ma passion.
Et puis il a eu très peur probablement, mais passion reprend le dessus sur la peur.
I mean, how do you even keep going after all that? A few races later at Hockenheim during a free practice in pouring rain with almost zero visibility, Pironi didn't see Alain Prost's Renault and slammed into it at over 170 miles per hour.
Es ging schnell erstens mal beim Wasser. Ironisch, hin aufs Schild, war es wieder hinterrad und dann ist es hochstehe und dann hat es überschlagen.
Car went like this, beside me.
It looked really, really bad. Pironi was stuck in the wreck, totally trapped, and it took half an hour only to get him out of the car before being rushed to the hospital. Somehow, he survived. Barely. He almost lost his legs and faced a brutal and long recovery. Not only was his season over, ending second in the end, but his F1 career was basically done. But death wasn't done with him yet. After years of rehab, Pironi tested a few F1 cars with AGS and Ligier, but never got a solid seat for 1987. So he turned to powerboat racing instead, chasing the thrill elsewhere. Then on the 23rd of August 1987, off the Isle of Wight, his boat flipped at high speed, and tragically, neither he nor his crew made it.
I received a phone call. Didier was dead.
A few weeks later, his wife gave birth to twins and named them Didier and Gilles, keeping both him and Villeneuve alive in memory. Without a doubt, one of the most tragic stories in this sport. But if we're talking tragic stories, there's definitely one that changed motorsport forever. Let's start with Mercedes, one of the most successful brands out there. The Silver Arrows came into F1 as a full team in 2010, and since then they've been absolute beasts.
And he crosses the line now to become the four-time world champion. Lewis Hamilton does it.
Mercedes, for the fifth year in succession, are the Constructors' Championship.
Dominating most of the hybrid era, with 7 drivers' titles and 8 Constructors' Championships. Insane numbers. But here's the question. If Mercedes was such a massive brand, why didn't they join F1 earlier? Well, they actually did, and they were seriously successful. The Silver Arrows raced in 1954 and 1955, and won both championships with Fangio. But then came a tragic moment that changed everything. The 1955 24 Hours of Le Mans. The race was intense. Mercedes with Fangio and Jaguar with Mike Hawthorne were fighting side by side for the win. Then, halfway through the race, Hawthorne overtook an Austin Healey driven by the Brit Lance Macklin on the main straight. But out of nowhere, he slammed the brakes and dived into the pits. Macklin, completely surprised, jerked his car to the left to avoid hitting him, but he didn't see that 2 Mercedes were flying down the straight right behind him. The first was Pierre Levesque, who was a lap down, and right behind him came Fangio. Everything happened in just a couple of seconds. In one last reflex, Leclerc raised his hand to warn Fangio, who somehow managed to avoid the crash by a sheer miracle. But Leclerc wasn't so lucky. He hit Macklin at over 125 miles per hour. His Mercedes was launched into the air, broke apart, and flew into the crowd like a fireball. The engine, the front axle, and chunks of the car landed on the spectators. Panic started spreading through the grandstands, all while the cars just kept racing and ambulances were coming and going non-stop. And yes, the race actually continued. Hawthorn, meanwhile, went on to win the race. And the final outcome? Well, Leclerc didn't make it. Neither did 83 spectators. Even today is still the biggest tragedy in motorsport history. And honestly, it makes zero sense that they didn't stop the race right away. Officially, the whole thing was written off as an unavoidable racing accident. There was never a proper investigation. What does seem pretty clear though, is that terrible safety standards and a major driving mistake by Hawthorn triggered the whole thing. As he crossed the line, he didn't yet know the scale of the tragedy, and so he celebrated the win like nothing had happened. This crash basically forced motorsport to rethink its whole relationship with danger and push for better safety for everyone, drivers and spectators alike. As for Mercedes, they pulled out of racing completely until 1989 and only came back little by little after that. Sadly, tragedies aren't just something from way back in the past. Even in modern F1, they still happen. Let's jump to the 2013 Canadian GP. Everything was going pretty normally until Esteban Gutierrez's Sauber had to retire near the end of the race.
That's Esteban Gutierrez in the Sauber, and he's gone into the barriers.
After the finish, a group of marshals went out with a crane tractor to pick up the car and take it back to the garage. That's when one of the marshals, Mark Robinson, dropped his radio. When he bent down to grab it, he tripped, and the crane ran over him. He was taken to the hospital right away, but sadly, there was nothing the doctors could do. That same year, there was another heart-stopping moment, this time at the German Grand Prix. It was lap 9 when Mark Webber came into the pits for a tyre change. And after a slow stop, well, this happened.
It is a long stop and there's a bit of wheel spin as he gets away, and he's been waved, there's a wheel gone, and a wheel rolling down, and he's hit the cameraman on the back.
Oh man. The tyre flew straight at the cameraman. He was rushed to the hospital right away. He ended up with 2 broken ribs, but luckily he recovered. Red Bull got hit with a €30,000 fine because this kind of thing should never happen again. And what should never ever happen and never should have was what happened to Roger Williamson at Zandvoort in 1973. He was a promising young driver, and during the race, one of his tyres blew. He lost control and crashed into the barriers. Flipping upside down on the other side of the track with his car on fire. That's when his friend and teammate David Purley showed up. He jumped out of his own car, trying to desperately save him. Hearing Williamson screaming to be pulled out while trying to flip the car back over. Meanwhile, the race just kept going like nothing was happening, and the marshals weren't helping. It was Purley against the world. By the time they finally handed him a fire extinguisher, it was already too late. One of the most shocking and heartbreaking moments in F1 history. And here's the thing. Race director Ben Hausman later said,
"I couldn't hear that corner on the radio, and I thought the smoke was just tires burning somewhere in the crowd."
Unbelievable. One thing's for sure. Back then, neither the track nor F1 were remotely prepared for a crash like this. And as is sadly typical in F1, it took a completely preventable tragedy for the FIA to finally tighten up the rules on rescue gear and track safety. Not the happiest video, I know. So if you need something lighter after this, check out this one next. And as always, thank you for watching.